Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. Hello, welcome back to a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode because I think it's going to be a really, really fun one. I'm here sitting with two friends, Mondraea and Erin. We happen to all work together. And recently we attended a leadership conference, the Live2Lead Conference from John Maxwell. And I was chatting with them and I thought, why not grab a cup of coffee and talk about our key takeaways from the session? And here we are. And we're going to be just talking and sharing our conversation today on what were our key takeaways from this conference. But before we jump into that, I just want to introduce them and give them a chance to share a little bit about them. So how about we start with you, Mondraea?
Sure. So hello, everyone, and thank you, Carolina, for having me. Super excited to be here. I'm Mondraea Calvin, as Carolina mentioned. Super excited about leadership, about my own personal journey, as well as leading others along the way. So looking forward to the conversation.
Erin, how about you?
So hi, I'm Erin Dewsbury-Ribeiro. I am also passionate about leadership. I'm an avid reader, and I'm really heavily focused on the topic of DE&I and inclusion. So that's a little bit about me.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
I have to say, Erin, you have been an inspiration for me on upping my game on reading more. Because every time I talk to you and I go all excited saying, guess what? I read 5 books. And you're like, oh, I've already read like 40 books this year. You are really an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
She is. I must agree. My audiobook list is growing. I'm not as good at hard copy, but I'm listening regularly because of you.
I'm still reading. That is still reading in my book. So yeah, absolutely.
Totally. So let's talk a little bit about the conference. So this was an event that we decided to go all together as a team. It was super fun. We were having a side conversation on dresses and shoes that speakers were wearing during the event. But we also were chatting about a lot of the content that was shared. And I think we all walk away feeling really inspired after this conference. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I think I thought about it and reflected for like the next, definitely over the weekend, which you try to turn work and things off, but I found myself regularly reflecting on it and of course continue to do so all the way up until today, especially some of those key takeaways.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking with the team the other day and the conference came up again and we were talking about some of the things from it. So it's definitely impacted not just us, but our team as well.
Mm-hmm. And during this conference, so for those of you who have never heard about the Live2Lead Conference, is typically it's an in-person conference, but since last year, they've also had a virtual option. We participated virtually and still got a lot out of it. And this conference is led by the John Maxwell Company. So John Maxwell is one of the keynote speakers, but this year they had really amazing speakers. They had Jeff Henderson, Jamie Kern-Lima, Valerie Burton, Ed Millett, Don Jagger, Yoel Manmi, and Tim Elmore on the lineup. And it was like a full day conference, nonstop all day. But the day went by really, really fast because it was so inspiring. Yeah. And I guess I want to start by asking you guys, what were the ones that were most impactful? I know they were all are, and we can talk about all of them, but we can be 2 days talking about all the sessions. So I want to narrow it down to maybe our top 4. So what would you say were your top 4?
So for me, yeah, like I would say Jeff Henderson was really impactful for me, and Jamie Kern-Lima. What about you, Mondraea?
Yeah, Jamie Kern-Lima, as well as Ed Milet. I really had a strong takeaway from him. And of course, John Maxwell, right?
Of course.
So lots of nuggets in that session, or both of those sessions too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You know, when I first heard about the conference, I was excited because there were a few people that I knew. Of course, John Maxwell, right? Who doesn't know John Maxwell, the father of leadership in modern times? Like, I have read many of his books, listened to his podcasts, but Ed Milet and Jamie Kern-Lima are 2 people that I regularly follow in social media. I've read their books, and it was really a motivation to join the conference. So how about we talk about those 4? Let's start with John Maxwell, since he's the one who opened the conference. And I know he just did like an update on his 21 laws of leadership. This is one of his most known books that he's written. And he only touched on 3, but I was wondering, what were your key takeaways from that session? Because I thought there was so much. It's probably one of the sessions that I took most notes on.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So for me, I think I'm looking at my notes here. So if you see me looking off to the side, but I have a couple things highlighted, and the number one thing was around putting your legacy in people and not a company. And it was such a reminder to, we get so busy in our work and in the grind of things that we forget this isn't what's going to matter 30 years from now. It's really, the time and the relationships that you have with people and multiplying yourselves, in them. So that was strong. He gave the analogy of a clock, a compass, and companions. I highlighted that. I'm sorry, you probably only wanted me to give one, but I'll stop after this one. But, mentioning that when you think about, your legacy overall, you consider a clock, and it really is a reminder of what are you doing now to, again, really build that legacy. He also recommended, or the other piece was a compass, and really looking at that to think about where are you going. So making sure you're forward thinking and you have a vision and a plan for your legacy. And then lastly, who are the companions? So who's really on this journey with you? So constantly thinking about, the people that you're surrounding yourselves with, and who are you intentionally focused to build a legacy for and with. So
yeah,
I'll stop there, so I won't go.
I'll pick it right up, Mondraea. So the ones that hit for me were, he talked about law 11, which is the law of the inner circle, and the idea that those who are closest to you determine your level of success. And I remember writing in the chat, I'm so thankful that I am surrounded by such amazing people on our team. I really truly believe that we have an amazing team, and so I intentionally choose who I surround myself with, because I think that leads to my success, their success. Can we influence each other in the positive way? And to the legacy point, he said, make sure you have legs to your legacy. And I thought that was amazing. And he inspired, or he encouraged us to write our legacy, right? What do you want your legacy to look like? And it reminded me of in the 7 Habits training from Franklin Covey, where they talk about, it may seem a bit morbid, but imagine your funeral. Seems morbid, but imagine your funeral. What do you want people to think when they think back on your life? What do you want them to think about?
Yeah.
And that is something that I carried forward, and he just really solidified it for me. How do I want to be seen? And thinking, and I reflected a lot about that.
Yeah, I think you guys touched on all the key takeaways from that session. I really like both the law of legacy, but also the law of the inner circle, and they were very connected, right? Because if you want to build a legacy, is through the people. And for that, you need to define who is in your inner circle.
Right.
And he said that at the point that he's in his life, he uses the 80-20 rule. So he invests 80% of his time and his energy to 20% of the people in his life, which are those that are part of that inner circle, that those that he wants to have close, right? And I think that's so powerful, right? And he talked about some questions that can help you determine who might be the right people to have in your circle. And I know we were chatting on the side. These are great questions when you're trying to build a team, even at work, right? Or even outside of work. But he talked about things like, do they leave out good values? Like, I love that he started with this, because a lot of times when we think about bringing someone into a team, we think about their capabilities, their skills, right? And starting with just the values, are there just good people? And I agree with you, Erin. Like, I feel very fortunate that our team it's a team of people that have very solid, good values and principles. We talked about, do they have high influence with others? This has nothing to do with your position or your title, but are you able to influence others, right, through the way you behave, the way you show up, the way you communicate? Do they have high giveness and competencies that complement the team? And I think
That was
that's
one of
of
my
the strengths of
favorites.
our team, right? That we complement each other so well. Can they lead well? Are they a good fit for the inner circle? Is not only the person by itself, but how does the person fit in the rest of the circle? And I think that a lot of times we underestimate that. We just look at the individual, but we don't look at how do they fit in that circle. Can they produce outstanding results? And then do they value people, and do they serve them? And I thought that was also a very powerful one, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Carolina, as you were going through those questions again, it really just made me think about all of them. To your point, when you think about interviewing an individual, it's really about their impact on others, right? And so you think about, how do you find this? How do you view this? And it's not really going to be in that individual, it's their story. It's what have they done to other people, and how have other people received that really demonstrates the credibility of that individual and their leadership or their capabilities.
Absolutely. And I think you made a great summary of the law of the legacy, Mondraea, but I think you mentioned something, Erin, that actually is a great segue to the next session with Jeff Henderson. You talked about the legacy and asking yourself the question of, how do you want to be remembered? And I know that Jeff talked about the power of 4, right? Not being the best leader, but being the best leader for others. And he took us or put out 2 questions that were really very powerful reflection. And I think it's a great segue from this whole topic of legacy, right? He talked about the 2 questions that can help grow your organization, your team, or you as an individual. He said, what do you want to be known for? Right? Which I think ties very well to what you were saying of being yourself at the end of your life, and asking yourself, what do you want people to remember you for? And the second one, what are you actually known for?
Is there a gap? And I thought really now we're looking at self-awareness and reflection, right?
Yeah. And building on that, you know, again, the question, you know, the key takeaway that I highlighted here is really, in addition to those questions, but how you view life is how you do life. So you have complete ownership, complete accountability for the answers to those questions, right? And so what you do and how you behave definitely drives it. And it was a good pause to stop and think, well, darn, what is my perspective? Am I always positive? Am I always negative? Am I optimistic about what's to come? You know, and so that was pretty powerful.
Right? Totally. And how are you carrying your weather as well, right? Like you have the power to decide you can't control the circumstances around you, but you can control how you react to them.
That's right.
And what is your attitude towards those things?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that statement as well. How you view life is how you do life. And I captured that, and many of us put it in the chat. And then I also like, just do a few things really, really well, right? So instead of being the jack of all trades, when you think about what you want to be known for, really focusing on a few things, but doing those really, really well and being intentional about it.
Yeah, that is so powerful, because I think a lot of times we think we just need to do more, right? And
Yeah.
get ourselves involved in so many things because we want people to see us as, as successful, meaning for a lot of people means all the things that we do. But
Yeah.
really, if you want to leave a legacy, you really need to go deep. It's not only how broad you go, but more importantly, how deep you go. And keeping in mind that you're doing that for someone, right? For the team, for the community, for the customer, and most importantly, for you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, I think that those two questions got me really thinking. To your point, Erin, on that gap is like, is the way that I want to be seen and be known for the same way that people see me? And that popped in me. I've been thinking for a while, like, when was the last time that I did a 360? Because I love to do those every year on my own. And last year I didn't. With the pandemic, I didn't felt it was the right time. And maybe I was just afraid on what feedback I was gonna get. But I've been thinking a lot about this idea, but being very intentional about what I ask. So I can really get to what is that gap between how I want people to know me for, and how do I want to, what are my intentions, how do I want to come across, and then how I actually come across in the eyes of others.
Yeah.
It's critically important, right? That you have that view. And, I think as he built on that statement, it was really around, and it goes back to, again, that legacy, that vision. But, once you define the gap, and of course you're closing that gap, once it's aligned, then you have vision carriers, he said, and it's people that are able to take your passion, your dream, your vision forward over and over, and multiply it, if you will. So I thought, again, really, really powerful session too.
Yeah. I try, and one of my biggest things in my personal life, professional life, is empathy, trying to lead with empathy and just live with empathy. And I think it's good when you get the feedback from somebody. Someone sent me a video from, I'm trying to think what it was. It was from Simon Sinek about empathy. And they said, this made me think of you. And I was like, that's a good win. But that's a person that I'm close with, we're very close. And I'm like, okay, that's good. But I also need to look at the critical feedback of people, and the people that I'm not as close with is that image that I'm trying to put out there, that what I want to be known for, is that across the board, or is it little pockets?
And is it consistent throughout all the interactions that you have?
Right.
Or just when you're in a good mood, right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of times when we're under stress, we revert back to our natural behaviors that maybe are not the ones that we want to be known for.
Yes.
And it's how are you intentional consistently when you're showing up, right? I know for me, one thing that has been very, very helpful, because I know that sometimes, I'm not perfect by any means, and I have a lot of areas for opportunity, and I know I can get very emotional or be very intense in the way that I come out, and that's not how I want to come across. So a lot of times when I know that I'm gonna be in a meeting or an interaction that I know is gonna trigger me, those things that I don't want to be triggered, I set an intention before the meeting, and I asked myself, how do I want to come across in this interaction? And that always helps me just to be more mindful, right? A lot of times I think it's, to your point, Erin, is being self-aware. Because if you're not self-aware, you can't improve. I think it's like a must, right? So how can you be more mindful and more self-aware? So then you can be more in control of how you react to situations as they come your way.
Yeah, I've been working towards, so I'm a cockeyed optimist. I am a glass all the way full type of person. And with the pandemic and everything, I really had to look at, and from the book Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, she talks about the always being on and the optimist, which I was like, oh, but those are good things, right? And then I realized, but if it's too much, if you have people that are struggling and they see that you're always happy and always optimistic, it can make them feel like, oh, I can't be, right? I can't be my true, authentic, vulnerable self where I'm having a bad day. So something that I've been trying to work on is like, it's okay to live in sometimes the bad moments, right? And then work through it to get back to it. And then also the idea that like showing, I mean, you guys have seen it this week. It's a hard week, and I'm showing my team I'm not made of stone, and I'm having a hard time, and letting them in on that allows them. And you talked about this, Carolina, in another podcast about showing your vulnerability for your team, for the people that are around you, so they know it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, and I think what I was going to say is, I think I struggle a little bit when you say, you know, that you have to dull down or dim your light to create space for other people. I think as a leader, I think it's just so important that they know your character, right? And they know who you are, and you give them space to be themselves, permission, you know, to be themselves. So it doesn't necessarily change who I am, but they know that they have, you know, this is safe space here where Erin's always going to be positive, right? But I know if Mondraea is having a horrible day, it is what it is, and Erin's not going to judge me. Erin's not going to, you know, change. So I think, you know, it's a balance, right? I can definitely understand modifying your behavior for the environment, but at the same time, it goes back to, what do you want to be known for? People also know that if they come into your presence and get surrounded by you, you just may be the person to, you know, make them see the world differently. And
that's a good way of looking at it.
I was listening to I was in a coaching session, and, you know, it kind of went back again to just women in general. And, you know, it's fear, right? Fear of being too much. And she's like, screw it, be too much, be who you are. Why not? The world needs it. And if you're not being too much, then you're not operating or walking in your gifts and who you're designed to be. I'm like, that's right. So
that's beautiful.
give yourself permission to be too much.
Yeah.
For your legacy.
There you go.
Talking about being too much, let's talk about Jamie Kern Lima.
Ooh, that was such a good one.
Yeah, I know. I read her book, Believe It. If you haven't read it, totally recommend it.
I started based on that session. I was inspired.
So what were your key takeaways from that one?
I'll let you go this time, Erin. Go first.
So one of my other big passions is makeup. So I actually did know who she was. She's the founder and creator of It Cosmetics. And her story for me was so powerful because she was told no so many times. That doesn't fit with this image. That doesn't fit in this brand. That's not part of who we are. She just came back again and again because she has skin issues herself, and she was creating a skincare and foundation brand that supported those individuals. And for her to, you know, be told no so many times, and to trust her gut and trust in her faith to continue for herself, but also for all the women and men and everyone that she helped to feel good in their skin, I think was so powerful.
Yeah, I think her story is so inspiring.
Mm.
That is one book that I read and I listened at the same time. I shared this with you that I sometimes, if I struggle focusing, I just
Mhm.
read and listen at the same time. And this one was one of those. And she reads her own book. And I cry many times as I was
Mhm.
reading her book. But I think she's such an inspiration around resilience and around passion for a vision that is bigger than herself, right?
Mhm.
And many times she found herself after hearing no so many times and, being almost to the point of bankrupt, right? And then
Yeah,
opportunities came her way that were not aligned with her vision. And then she stood up and say no to those, and she
yeah,
stick to her vision and her mission, right? Um, she was told by experts when she had this one chance at QVC, you need to use this type of models.
right.
And she couldn't sleep that night thinking about, okay, these is what the experts are telling me, and this is what might save my business, but it didn't felt right
In her soul.
in her soul, right? And she went in public television herself when everyone told her she wasn't the right person, right? And
Right. Look.
showed her face without makeup with all her skin issues. And she was talking to women, to one woman that probably was at her house doing laundry and had the same condition as her. And she made herself vulnerable and relatable, and she stood for what she believed in. And she had only a matter of seconds to save her business. And she did because she
Yeah.
believed in her mission, but the courage that it takes to do that, it was so inspiring to me.
I almost can't sit still here with this one because I think, as a Christian, someone that's strong and, continually journeying in the faith, her story resonated so well with trusting what God has put inside of you. And it's a journey to really recognize and trust that voice, right? And the way that she told her story, I could just relate to being in different situations in my life where it's like, okay, God, is this you? This just doesn't seem right. Would you really make me go all the way or do this in order to come back there? But, she said, he gave me a no, as in N-O, but he, as in God, gave me a knowing. And that was like so powerful because it's like deep, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even explain it, but when she also talked about how many no's are really a setback for a setup. And, again, when you think about divine order, it's a process, it's a journey to get there. And she really translated that very well. And it resonated just as a Christian
Yeah.
and life trial. So
I felt like, I live in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And so I'm always looking through that lens. And so when she's talking about, doing it for herself, but for all the people, I just imagine all the people that felt unseen and unrecognized and ignored. And her story just makes it seem like, no, we see you. We see you. Whether it takes all the no's, you can persevere and you can be seen and you should be seen.
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely an inspiration. I've heard her speak several times. I read to her book, and every time, like, I have goosebumps because I'm like, all the things that right, in theory, you see them possible in someone who is struggling, because a lot of times we say, yeah, this is easy when life goes your way.
yes.
But to do these things and believe in these things and stand up for these things when it's totally the opposite.
Yeah.
It's such a role model for courage and faith and resilience,
Mhm.
that it was very, very inspiring.
Yeah. And so often, right, we see that in products. So this is my first time hearing and learning of Jamie Kern, but I definitely have her book now added to my audiobook. So I have
Yep.
not yet read it. But you think about the process of a diamond, and we always see the beautiful diamond on the other side, but the process to get there,
Yeah.
he really had the process. And that journey is refining and just it's tough. It's tough,
Yeah.
but she withstood, and her courage and her perseverance
Yeah.
brought her through. So
For sure.
I literally am wearing her It Cosmetics CC cream right now.
okay.
Every day I wear her stuff. Before I even saw that, I was a believer and a fan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so let's talk about the fourth one, Ed Millett.
Yes.
My
have to
favorite.
say, this is the third, fourth time that I've been to an event where Ed Millett is a keynote speaker. And I just love his approach and his message. Like, it's so powerful. He also has a book. It's called Max Out. It's a very short one, but totally worth reading. And
Okay.
it's so, so inspiring. And I told you guys before the session, I was containing myself to share like how excited I was about this one, about the power of one. This is something that I heard for the first time on the Atomic Habit books. This 1% rule, right? Being 1% better every day. And he translates that into one more, like do one more of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
But he brought a totally new perspective to that, one more. And I have to say that I cried during this session.
Yeah.
The stories that he shared about his son and his dad.
Yeah.
He was really vulnerable, and I was really, really touched. But I'm really intrigued. Before I jump into my takeaways, what were your takeaways from this one?
Should I go? So
yeah, go ahead, Mondraea. Go ahead.
he was again, hands down, my absolute favorite. My absolute favorite. I loved his energy. I loved his stories. I mean, I laughed, I cried, I had aha moments. But I'm gonna tell you the thing, I think it was maybe minor to a lot of people, but the thing that was most impactful for me is he said, you are always making people feel something.
Yes.
What are you making people feel, and are you intentional about it? And that's what I cannot get out of my head. Every interaction that I've had since that day, I'm thinking about that, right? And I think about it through the lens of not just positive moments, but especially when you have to give someone feedback or critical feedback. I journeyed with that for a little bit in my mind. Just it reminds you of the importance of making people still feel capable and empowered, although you're helping and coaching, right? So your words matter, your approach matters, your timing matters. And so I really realized in this session too, I really love the feel it. And there was a different speaker that talked about feel it moments, but these are the things I think that really drives and making understanding and seeing how people feel really, really.
And you can tie it back to this whole topic of legacy that we were talking about, right?
Yes.
What you want people to remember you for. It's probably how you made them feel, right? Because there's a saying that says, or a quote that says, people will not remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
Your kids, your spouse, your team, your boss, your parents, at any moment of their life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, how are you making them feel? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he was talking about that, he showed a lot of faces of people that we will deem as successful, right?
Yeah.
He had Oprah Winfrey there. He had John Maxwell, Mother Teresa. He had a lot of faces there. And he said that these people are all evangelists, and not from a faith standpoint, but it's his talk was all about influence, right? How can you influence others? And I really
Mhm.
like this perspective on influence, because a lot of times we think about influence like convincing someone of something,
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like, it doesn't matter whether people believe what you're saying. What matters is that they believe that you believe in what you're saying.
Yes.
Exactly.
That was like, it was like one of those like aha moments in my head.
Yeah.
Like, yes. He also said how he's been married for many years, and he like, every argument I had with my wife, she always wins.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because she's more confident in herself. So when you have two
Yeah.
people, the one that is more confident in him or herself, typically is the one that is more influential.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, we talk a lot about self-confidence, right? With Jamie Kern Lima, that was also a topic, self-confidence. And
Mhm.
personally is one area that I think I still need to improve, and I'm constantly working on. But it's
Yeah.
so true. The times that I've been able to influence others positively are the times where I've been more confident on
Sure.
myself and the message that I was trying to transmit to others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
I had a moment of doubt, I'll say, when I was watching his story about his son at the golf outing. And I struggled with it, honestly, because he talked about the idea that his son wasn't doing well, and then he was being made fun of, and people were doubting him, doubting his son's ability. And so they questioned, he can't win, right? He can't win this thing. And for a moment, friends, I honestly was like, okay, what path is he going to take here? Because for me, I was like, oh, he should support his son and whatever his ability is, or, whatever. And that is not the path that he took. And for a minute, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, when he was saying at the beginning, he was all focused about having fun with his son playing golf, right?
Right.
And I'm not a golfer, so he lost me when he was talking about the technical things.
Par and all of that. Yeah.
But he was talking about how it was all about having fun until people start making fun of his son. And
Right.
then he got his son to a side and he's like, you are gonna win.
Yes.
And I, like you, I felt uncomfortable for a minute, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been telling my team how awesome Ed Millett is and how great the things that he has to say. And this is what he's talking about, like pushing his son. And like, I felt uncomfortable for a minute. So I share that, Erin.
Okay, good. I'm not alone.
I
But
love the turn that the story took, right?
I know, seriously. So then he talks about now his son is like, he has scholarships and he's amazing at golf now. And I was like, I started looking at myself, am I unlocking my kids' potential by letting them have fun or and I was like, oh, I gotta look at this more.
I think so my husband is super competitive, right? And
Yeah.
we kind of go through that a little bit with the kids, right? We got to play good cop, bad cop. Sometimes we need the intensity. Sometimes it's like you're being too much. But
Yeah.
I think for me, it really spoke to, you have to try different approaches with people sometimes to get into what works for them, what drives them, because ultimately it helped unlock something that was deep down. And, maybe now he's driven by competition, right? He's driven by, or just the fact of somebody saying, it's me and you, we got this, let's do it. And truly supporting and championing him, right?
Yes.
Maybe the the lackadaisical thing didn't work. And so shifting your approach or modifying, adjusting, how you lead somebody based on the situation is real. Everything isn't rose color, what is it? Rainbows and lollipops. Sometimes it's like, put that down. It's time to get the guns out. We're ready to fight now.
And the other thing about that story, the other message that I took at least, I don't know if that was the intention of the story, but is your mindset is so powerful, right?
Yes.
You need to adopt a
Yes.
winning mindset.
Yes.
You
Yes.
need to believe, just like Jamie Kern-Lima talks about believing, you need to believe that you can win
That's right.
Yes.
before you win.
That's
if
right.
you really
No
want
doubt.
to win.
That's right.
For
Right.
sure. And
Yeah.
that's I think what I ultimately took away from it is he had his son's back, right? Even if I questioned it for a minute, he had his son's back. And then his son, you can see in the pictures that he shared of him signing, you know, I don't know if it was the college
Scholarship or
scholarships and things like that. He's signing that. You can see the pride his son had.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't him doing it for him from Ed, right? It was him doing it for his son, and the pride his son had in the end of it was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. And don't get, you know, the other thing too, I'm like, it could have gone south, right? Maybe your son could have totally broke down, but in that instance it worked. But it was good that, you know, he took a different approach in that moment, and the benefits, obviously he's realizing the benefits of it. But
Right.
you're right. I think the mindset and just the support is so critical to, especially younger talent or children or whatever it may be.
Agreed.
Yeah. Now
Agreed.
we can end the conversation around Ed Milet's session without talking the one more concept.
Oh gosh, yes.
I mean, this is the one thing that when I think about Ed, it's what I think about. But this time he shared through his personal story with his dad, and it was so powerful.
Yeah, it resonated with me, and I put it in the chat when we were with the group. So my dad battled esophageal cancer, and he was diagnosed stage 4 esophageal cancer, and he was told standard timing for someone diagnosed at that level is like a year, 6 months to a year. And my dad lasted 4.5 years fighting every single day. He did all the standard chemo and radiation, and then he did every experimental thing he could do. When he was diagnosed, my kids were not even a thought or an idea, right? And then he saw them born. Both of my older 2 kids, he saw them born. He saw my daughter, her first birthday, her second birthday, almost made it to her 3rd birthday, and she still remembers him. And when I thought about that one more, I know mindset again, he was doing it for them, right? He was doing it so that he wanted to see them born. He wanted to see the first birthday. He wanted to one more day, one more moment, one more something. And I truly believe that is so powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole concept, for those that were not there on the session or have not heard about Ed, is this concept of just do one more, right? It can apply to, in his example, similar to your dad, his dad was battling cancer, and he lived way beyond what every prognosis, because he had been an alcoholic in the past, and he at one point his life turned, right? And he stopped drinking for his family. And after being diagnosed, he was helping people get out of alcohol. So every day he would text people for his 1-day anniversary without drinking alcohol. And it was always about helping one more person, doing one more, right? And Ed translates that into everything in life. Like if you are exercising, do one more rep. If you're reading a book, read one more page. Like do one more of anything that you're doing. And that's how you push yourself outside of your comfort zone, outside of your limits. You test your limits, and then you grow as a person. But he does it thinking about being of service to others. And I like this concept that he talks about. He's also a man of faith, which I really related with this that he shared, that in this life, right, this concept of one more is helping you becoming a better version of yourself, because the day that you leave earth, right, and you are in the presence of God and you're presented to your identical twin, right, that person that you were meant to be, And he's like, when I meet that person, I want to be identical twins. I don't want to meet this person and don't recognize who that person is, because I never grew to my fullest potential, to who I was meant to be. And that is so powerful. I mean, I personally, I'm Sangwan. You guys know me. I'm all about personal growth. I'm all about becoming a better version of myself in everything that I do. Not always I accomplish it, but I always in this constant journey of becoming better. And that really resonated with me, because I'm like, yeah, for me, my biggest fear in life is get to a point of my life where I look back and I regret not having done something, not having leave that legacy, not having become the best version of me, or have grown to my fullest potential. And it's not on a sense of growing my career, right? It's growing as a person, as an individual.
Yeah. I think too, and you know, when you think about that, sometimes when you envision that perfect version, just to tie it all in, you get easily overwhelmed. So again, that power of one, just doing one more thing. But he also mentioned, he said, you know, God does not call the qualified. So God isn't looking for people that already have it together. He qualifies those who are called. So again, the qualification comes in just the one more, just doing one more of something to help get you to that better version. So you don't have to be overwhelmed with that profile, right? But you know, every day you're making a step, or you're taking one more action closer to getting there. So
you're working towards
it's so powerful, because a lot of times we're like, once I'm good at this, then I'll do that.
Exactly.
Once I get there, then I'll do that. And it was all tied to, no, just start today. Just do one thing, one more thing, one more time until you get there, because that really resonated with me too. Okay, so let's wrap this up. This is so exciting. I'm so excited to do this with you. We definitely need to do another podcast episode. But before we wrap up, if you can summarize just with one thought, this Live to Lead conference, your key takeaway, the way it made you feel, what have you applied, what resonated the most with you, what would that be?
Mondraea?
So this again, my first experience with a Live to Lead conference, extremely powerful. I mentioned, you know, really when I say the notion of feel it moments and being cognizant about what that is, you know, that I'm actually doing that was my key takeaway, and something that I think has continued to resonate with me. And I think also because I'm personally on this journey of finding my why, right? What is my why? What am I here for? And when I think about, you know, what really inspires me, it's really experiences. And I go back and I connected it directly to that. It's about what you feel in those experiences. So I really felt like, you know, by participating or being a part of this conference, it was again in divine order. And I'm getting those little nuggets towards clarifying that why, and feeling like it's around the feeling and the experience, and you know, whether that be for individuals or life. So extremely appreciative to have gone and to have, you know, shared the experience. I've opened my eyes to all these different speakers. I had not heard of them, anyone outside of John Maxwell before. So extremely excited to keep applying these principles to me personally, as well as to those that I lead. So
and I think for me, one of the most impactful things was really looking at myself and trying to have self-awareness about, you know, this idea of my legacy. What do I want that to be? What the image of, you know, what do I want to be known for? I tie it all in together, but what am I known for? And really looking at that critically to see if when I show up, am I my identical twin, right? Does that happen? And I think that's someone that we didn't talk about, Valerie Burton, talked about the present tense of the best possible self, and using not I want to be this or I'm going to be this in the future. I am this or I have this. And that's something that resonated with me too. Like visualize it in the now, right? What you achieve to be, I guess. So that was really powerful.
Yeah, for me it's very similar to that, but also keeping in mind that it's not about me, right?
Yeah.
When I'm working on the best version of me, is not about
Mm-hmm.
me, is about the impact that I have in others
Mm-hmm.
and doing it for others.
Yeah.
It's not, because I'm a very ambitious person in the best sense of the word, right? Like I'm always striving to do better, to do more. And I think that when I started this, I was always thinking very selfishly, right? I want to be better. I want to be the best. And that has changed over time. I don't know if it's just that I'm mature over time, experiences over time, but it was a good reminder that whatever I do is not for me, is for the legacy that I leave behind. And that is about others, is not about me. How can I be of service? How can I help others? How can I make an impact in others and leave my print in others, to help them to leave, when I leave those people, that they were better than before I got into their lives.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, this was amazing. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I'm really grateful that we decided to do this as a team, even though it was
Me
a
too.
virtual event, even though we were not all together.
Yeah.
But it really brought us together and got us thinking a lot about us individually, but also as a team. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you to be here today. And as I said, I will be calling you back for another episode on a different topic, whatever that is. Maybe it's a book that we read.
I was gonna say,
Event.
actually, Carolina, I have to give you credit because you talked about the amount that I read that is inspiring. Do you know part of the, I don't think I've told you this before. Do you know part of the reason that I'm reading so much now? One of the things is you told me when we had our first one-on-one, when you were coming onto the team as one of my leaders, we sat down at the Starbucks and we were talking about, and you gave me an example that you read and listen to books at the same time. I have taken that and run with it. I have read almost every book that I've read this year, and I've read 83 so far on my target to 100. I not only the development and leadership books, but also the fiction books that I read. If I can find the audiobook to pair with it, I do it in tandem. I do it at the same time.
Cool.
And that has helped me skyrocket my reading goals. So thank you.
I mean, 83 books. Wow.
I read 93 last year, and my stretch target for this year is 100, and I'm on track. So let's see if I can hit it.
Wow. That's impressive.
Well, I think we can do a podcast episode just on the books that you've read.
That would be awesome. I would love that.
I'll look forward to listening to that one.
Okay, cool.
Well, again, thank you both. I can't wait for people to hear to this conversation. I really have enjoyed it. For those listening, if you like today's podcast episode, remember to go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review and share this podcast episode to anyone that you think can benefit from today's content.
Absolutely.
And with that, we hope everyone has an amazing day. We'll see you again next week for another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast.
Thanks for having us.